Welcome, everybody. We're just getting some technical things set up. We'll be starting momentarily. All right, hello and welcome everyone to our very first ever State of Delegation talk. Thank you so much for joining me today. So today we're going to talk about the role of delegation in our success as leaders, and it's really no secret. While all the struggles have remained the same over time, the approach that we take to addressing our own concerns with delegation continues to evolve at a rapid pace. What was once effective during the 1950s, where women delivered coffee to men in suits, quickly evolved with the rise and fall of virtual assistants and the whole offshore outsourcing trend. But what's certain is that the state of delegation remains a constant and rapid evolution. High-performing, driven individuals now require advanced strategies to thrive, especially in our post-pandemic world. And today, we're going to take a look into the future of work and delegation to gain insights and stay ahead in a dynamic work landscape as we lay out how AI, remote work, and evolving leadership models will shape the way that we delegate. Today is really a thesis of where we've been, the inflection points that led us here today, and how leadership delegation styles have shifted and how we think about the future. As high-performing leaders, we owe it to ourselves to envision and embrace the future state of delegation. So let's dig in. So let's start here, where the delegation becomes a thing era. Maya Angelou is known for sharing these words of wisdom, which beautifully sums up our goal with today's talk. You can't really know where you're going until you know where you've been. We're about to take a dive into unpacking the objective history of delegation, back to the earliest mention of delegation in a chronological profile, accounting for all the different evolutions we've seen with delegation. By starting at the beginning, we can see how far we've come and enter the future more informed and more prepared. So let's go all the way back to when delegation actually became a thing. These are the times where men wore wigs and stockings, where high-ranking individuals used scribes, to document events and maintain records, basically showing their first real administrative support positions. Men held this title, and they were typically supported by very specific tasks like daily correspondence and other activities that were dictated by rich and powerful men that employed them. In these times, leadership and management were not established concepts, and delegation was really one way, focused on hierarchy, power, authority, more so than efficiency or time management. By the mid-19th century, we had our first inflection point with the birth of delegation theory, and we see this idea of efficiency start to become a thing. This guy, Frederick Winslow Taylor, who coincidentally I learned is from Philly like me, was the author of the Scientific Management Principles, which emphasized that task delegation was designed to enhance efficient management for organizational effectiveness. This historic shift marked a change from merely assigning tasks to a strategic use of delegation that was designed to optimize time and leadership. And Taylor's principles really formed the foundation for efficient delegation and really marked a big transition in how tasks were assigned and managed. So between the Industrial Revolution and the introduction of these early management theories and concepts, we find ourselves entering the secretarial evolution era. By the turn of the century, the landscape of work was rapidly changing. So we were transitioning from this agrarian-based economy to an industrial one. So there was lots of factories, mass production, and an increased need for management and coordination. The secretary became a role, and schools started to emerge to train mainly male students. Delegation remained highly transactional in nature, and leaders led with a style of command and control. It remained hierarchical, with employees having very limited autonomy or decision-making power. But there was new focus on delegating tasks to increase efficiency and productivity as a way to streamline production. Between 1900 and 1940, delegation underwent significant changes due to this rise of industrialization. It was largely focused on assigning tasks and detailed work to workers based on some sort of scientific analysis designed to maximize productivity. So this is when delegation was begun to be seen as a tool for managers to divide work and allocate authority effectively. At this point, it was still primarily a top-down process. Managers made decisions and assigned tasks to their subordinates. The emphasis was really on strict supervision and control to ensure that work was done according to established standards. We also see women start to enter the workforce and the secretarial industry start to formalize into what is now a normal role in the workplace. The invention of the typewriter at this time also led to the influx of women entering the field. This era may look familiar as shown in shows like Mad Men, which was based in the 1950s. As we enter the mid to late 1900s, we see the most significant developments with delegation, and the secretarial evolution really hits its stride. You'll likely recall some of these famous TV secretaries. So during the mid-20th century, delegation underwent substantial evolution that was shaped by diverse management theories, changes in society, and changes in technology. And this era marked a shift in leadership from top-down authoritative delegation to more participative and flexible leadership styles that was highly focused on empowerment and collaboration. Now we hit the late 90s, and our next big inflection point happens: the invention of the internet and cell phones. Email and texting become our new communication norms, and suddenly we became instantly accessible with tons of information at our fingertips and so much work to keep up with. The technological revolution really had this profound impact on our space. And essentially, we entered information overload. As leaders, we needed to navigate through large volumes of information and it made delegating tasks effectively very confusing. So in this moment, the freedom of time becomes a thing of the past, and delegation becomes one of our only ways to recapture it. So that brings us to where we are. We've witnessed the evolution of delegation even in the last 100 years. Management theories dominate and set the tone for how we lead, and technology sets the pace that we constantly struggle to keep up with. So today as leaders, we're grappling with so many considerations that make finding relief through delegation more cumbersome than necessary. Welcome to the decision fatigue era. So we enter this era with another key inflection point. We see leaders start to use delegation to create personal leverage. All of this newfound accessibility also created an expectation for immediate responses and actions, furthering this urgency to save time in responding to or completing tasks. The fast-paced growth coupled with technology created a culture of multitasking, where we became obsessed with saving time and trying to accomplish several tasks at the same time. While this can be efficient, it also creates a sense of urgency and a constant need to maximize every moment. And I believe that it's in this moment that we begin to deeply value our time and start to look at delegation as a way to take it back. So all of this intensity created a noticeable shift in the way administrative support was viewed. Because of the busyness and access that technology brought, leaders started to rely on their assistants to clear their plates. So by the early 2000s, we see these entry-level roles start to become career paths. We also see an influx of women into the space, as well as the reclassification of secretary to admin assistant or EA. This is the era that I entered the workforce at the start of my career as an EA. Additionally, admins now had a transition from a one-to-one support model to supporting more than one executive at a time. So advanced skills in time management and prioritization became crucial elements for success, as we had to become the ultimate multitaskers. So fast forward, and that brings us to what we affectionately refer to at Delegate as the Wild West era of our industry. The introduction of the VA world, which has certainly exploded in the post-pandemic world, is when I started Delegate Solutions almost 2 decades ago, when virtual assistants were unheard of. It took a lot of convincing to help others understand that this was the future of the sector. In 2008, I was even featured in a New York Times article introducing the concept of virtual assistant. Those were the good old days, and we were literally building the plane as we were flying it. And I can't even tell you how many hundreds of conversations I've had in the years that followed where I had to even try and explain what a VA was. But what's important to note is throughout this entire history, that these roles from scribe to secretary to VA were purely transactional relationships. The leader carried the burden to identify what to delegate and to manage the support effectively. And as technology matured, so did our expectations with accessibility and the level of support. VAs provided a quick solve to help people clear their plates and get that sense of instant gratification with delegation, without the commitment or overhead of a traditional full-time assistant. So 20 years later, as the VA industry was finally building awareness and momentum, COVID happens, and overnight we find ourselves at our fourth inflection point, the overnight normalization of remote work and fractional workforces. What I had spent years preaching and predicting had suddenly normalized faster than even I could process. Suddenly, everyone was forced to work on Zoom, and the fight for talent raged on. We had to learn how to incorporate fractional team members into our accountability charts and to start to delegate within these constructs. It was truly a remarkable shift in the future of work that the VA model really paved the way for. So speaking of remarkable, that brings up our fifth delegation inflection point, which occurred just in the last 12 months. And that's the integration of AI into the mainstream office environment. It may arguably be the most transformational influence on the delegation landscape. While AI-driven technology certainly presented its challenges, it also paved the way for some exciting possibilities for the future of delegation. It will continue to transform our delegation work dramatically. Picture this, the fusion of AI technology with an exceptional support partner working seamlessly in tandem. AI is not just about automation, it's about amplifying collaboration power, reducing mental fatigue, and channeling our efforts towards making an impact. Our team at Delegate is embracing its growth and impact as we use AI to supercharge workflows with things like inbox management, coordination, to just name a few. So we've navigated COVID, embraced new constructs of working together, and rode the rocket ship of AI, and we're all still here to talk about it. I believe that our resiliency of being entrepreneurial businesses has made us even more adaptable and welcoming to these past shifts. However, what this adoption has done is create an overabundance of options in the delegation space. And as leaders, we are doggedly chasing faster, better, smarter. And in our search for that, what was once a cutting-edge solution has now become a saturated, overwhelming market. People from around the world have flooded in, diluting both the product and the results. And now there's an overabundance of options when it comes to seeking support. So as leaders, we can choose from on-site assistant, US-based virtual assistant, offshore assistant, nearshore assistant. There's even options for personalized matchmaking or leaning into a systematic method like we run at Delegate. Bottom line, the marketplace is overwhelming. And we are fatiguing as leaders trying to navigate which type of delegation resource works best for our needs. What was once a cutting-edge solution has now become an oversaturated market. This has created what I think is a potential nightmare as unqualified individuals inundate the market. So enter inflection point 6, the commoditization of the delegation space. The problem with this shift is that delegation is complex and human and not transactional. So doing drive-by delegation, price shopping, or impulse buying delegation support ultimately leads to potential failure, which in turn only erodes our confidence and ultimately hinders the delegation process and growth as a whole. Delegation is multifaceted and it involves many human elements like trust, understanding, and communication, and it goes beyond a simple exchange of tasks. It requires a recognition of individual strengths, preferences, and skills, as well as a deep understanding of your own unique ability and your most impactful contribution. So the goal is that for delegation to be successful for the long term, you have to see it work over time to build confidence. You have to feel the impact and find joy in the work that you're doing. So that brings us to the final portion, and in my opinion, the most exciting part of the state of delegation. We took Maya's sage advice. We know how we got here, we know why, and now we can learn from it and start to harness it for the future. So think back to your earliest memory of what a secretary looked like. That was essentially 2 eras ago. Think of how far we've come since then. Typewriters that were all the rage are now obsolete dinosaurs. That's essentially what VA as we know it is about to become. It's no longer special or unique when everyone is doing it or buying it. So where does the future of delegation go for high performers who really want to stay ahead of the curve? The next era of delegation is all about whole person delegation. We see it evolving rapidly in this direction with the various inflection points that have started to compound to start to value our time. And the outcome of that being that delegation is really a way to manage our energy. So in this whole person era that we're entering, delegation transcends the office and leans into the search for total leverage. High performers have always been the ones that understand how to leverage teams and groups. They know that delegation is a fundamental leadership skill. And in the whole person era, the future of delegation actually becomes about increasing your time and your impact. So the dominant leadership style is all about how you use support to hold the personal and the professional together, because the boundaries between work and home have completely broken down and it all blends together. The future of delegation begins to support all of those parts of your day. That brings me to our first forecasted trend. We are delegating for our whole person, and we are delegating to increase our individual impact. So overall, we're seeing a generational desire to create impact through our work. And Time magazine reports that some 70% of Americans say that they define their sense of purpose through work, with millennials in particular looking for opportunities in their work to contribute to what they believe is their wider purpose. And for the entrepreneurs we work with, that number is definitely near 100%. The Japanese have an ancient philosophy called ikigai, which translates to a reason for being or living. And they believe so much in the power of it that they attribute their overall happiness and longevity to it. At Delegate, we call this your most impactful contribution. It's a total blending of personal and professional lives. And we will see delegation start to take a whole person approach where we are optimizing and streamlining all the parts of our lives. So plan for this as you think about the leaders you work with and the high-performing teams that you're building. So I just shared that 70% of Americans say they define their purpose through work. With the struggle to hang on to employees at an all-time high, delegation will become a retention strategy that will help you better leverage key employees and allow them to work in their own most impactful contribution. So as you look at your employee retention budgets, you'll want to start incorporating delegation resources as perks. So key employees can get help with more of the menial tasks, both personal and professional. High-performing leaders know that not delegating well creates frustration and chaos in their teams. As leaders get more comfortable with delegating all the parts of their lives and are looking for creative ways to retain their staff, they'll start to naturally cascade a culture of delegation. empowering their teams to focus on impact over busyness. But the trick here will be to create a safe environment that fosters impact and contribution over sitting at a desk looking productive 40 hours a week. These elevated leaders will have to bring their own element of consciousness to create buy-in on their team. Next, high-performing leaders will be looking to up their delegation game by focusing on how they can start to delegate their thinking. So as we look to scale beyond our impact, as we look to scale our impact, it's obvious that the next place to look would be beyond tasks. The quantity task level delegation game will help you get stuff done, but it will not help you or your teams reach the next level of growth. Future thinking leaders will be learning how to delegate their thinking around activities and decisions that are leading to decision fatigue as a way to free up time for more impactful work. As a next step you can take with your teams, we are including a tool in the toolbox that will follow with this recording to help you assess talent and trust on your own and determine the current level of delegation trust available to you on your existing team. As high-performing leaders of the future, being committed to learning and evolving beyond our own mental constructs will determine who gets ahead and who gets left behind. We now have a new sense of freedom where we can work from where we want, when we want, and how we want, and use our time to make the impact that we're called to make. It's quite a beautiful time in the evolution of leadership, and it's why we just created and launched our new delegation solution for the future, Personal Project Manager, or PPM. This approach to delegation has a few core philosophies that you can integrate into your leadership toolbox. First, we teach the leaders that we work with to view delegation as an energy management system and to embrace it as a tool and a habit rather than a chore. Next, because of the fast-paced nature of our world, we want to focus on 90-day delegation sprints. So rather than complicated long-term plans, we work in 90 days to keep things fresh, current, and adaptable. So as you think about how you will delegate in the future, be thinking about your who, so who you're working with, as an accountability or thinking partner, someone who can complement you, help you stay on track, and process through new ideas and concepts with the goal of freeing you up. Lastly, we teach our clients that before we start to delegate, we first get clear on what we want to spend our time on. So as you approach your future, ask yourself repeatedly, what is my most impactful contribution? And set up your delegation strategy with that in mind. We call this process the Freedom Loop, and it's at the heart of our new Personal Project Manager program, where you dream it up and we make it happen. You can learn more about this new program for high performers on our website. So as we head into the future of delegation, keep these 3 forecasted trends top of mind. Number 1, focus on the whole person and using delegation to increase your impact. Number 2, use delegation as a tool and leadership commitment that you can use to keep and attract talent. And number 3, next level delegation. Think about delegation beyond tasks and find new ways to delegate decisions and thinking to reduce decision fatigue. Keep these trends in mind as you create strategies to develop your teams. Remember, we're all here to make an impact that only we can make. Use delegation as your tool to achieve that calling. Thank you so much for joining today. That concludes our 2024 State of Delegation talk. Wishing you a wonderful year ahead. Thanks for joining.